Robert Greene in studio, in the flesh. You are actually one of our most requested guests.
Is that right?
Yeah, for the past
Who's the
year.
most requested?
Dr. K, the gaming psychologist.
Don't even know who that is. Wow. Have you had him on?
I have not. I've contacted his people, but
What's so amazing about Dr. K?
well, he's a psychiatrist who targets mental health for gamers.
And that's a lot of your audience.
I guess so.
I think a lot of YouTube. Yeah, a lot of YouTubers.
I guess so.
It's the Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck podcast with your host, Mark Manson.
So my first question for you is actually quite selfish. As a younger author, I find your career so fascinating because you have this long history of successful books, but it really seems like there's this resurgence of interest, especially in the 48 Laws of Power over the last few years. It seems like Gen Z is discovering Robert Greene and you're getting this whole second wave of attention. I'm curious what that experience has been like, what your thoughts on that are, and whether you feel like you have any control over that or if it just happened.
Well, I don't know. It's probably a confluence of things. Who knows why things happen in this world? It's complex and it's mysterious. But I would say social media has played a huge role in it because back 10 years ago or so, nobody really knew who I was. I had no Instagram. I was a little bit on Facebook. But I hadn't really gotten into social media at all. I was very, very scant on Twitter. And so I think a lot of it is about 5 years ago, some fan said, "You've got to get on social media." And he took over and he did it himself for me.
Oh, wow.
And we ended up having to fire him because he was kind of a control freak. But he's a nice guy, but he just wanted to kind of run my empire. He would call it my empire. He would say, "Your legacy, I'm going to protect your legacy as if I'm dead," or something. So I got rid of him. Anyway, suddenly, it started growing. I have this guy, Stanley, who's my assistant who puts clips. And he's very good at choosing certain clips. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it is social media giving me a presence. Up until recently, I could walk down the street. Nobody knew who the hell I was.
Yeah.
And suddenly people started recognizing me because of this. It was just exploded.
Yeah.
Even in places like London or Paris, it's got this international reach. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And so I have to thank social media for that, for paying my mortgage and all the other things like that. But then why has it resonated now? And I think young people are dealing with a world that's so much more chaotic and confusing. Some of it has to do with the conditions of the world that we're living in, which is, as I said, much more chaotic than it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. Some of it has to do with the parenting issues, how differently they have been raised, and the culture that they're entering. And so because of that feeling kind of very lost and confused, the 48 Laws of Power kind of gives you sort of a grounding in kind of the dark, harsh aspect of life. Because I don't know, I'm not Gen Z, so it's hard for me to generalize. Of course, it's ridiculous to generalize.
Right.
But a lot of them feel maybe they've been a little bit sheltered from that kind of harsh aspect of life. I know when I was 21, if I can remember back that far, I entered the work world out of college. And I was a liberal arts major, ancient Greek and Latin. You can't get any more irrelevant subject than that. My first job was real job, because I had many different jobs. My first real job was at Esquire magazine. I was the lowest editor there, an editorial assistant. It was mind-blowing. I couldn't believe power games that were going on, because nothing in college prepared you for that. All the egos of the writers and the editors, the celebrity, the weirdness. I once edited an article by John Irving, the writer.
Yeah.
He turned in a travel article about Vienna because I was the travel editor. It was such a bad article. It was go to this cafe, turn right, and then go here, and then turn left and go. It was that kind of writing. Yeah. I edited it totally. I made it like a narrative. And I got essentially fired because of that, or got demoted. I had outshone the master, law number one. So it was this rude awakening into this is what the world is really like. I had to school myself very quickly. And then with my 50 different jobs, I learned over time, this is how the world is. Young people are going through that, but times 10, because the world is even more confusing. They're not used to dealing with all of these egos, to all the political games. So I think, I can't say for sure, but I think these are some of the components that go into this revival of the book. It's selling 5 times more than it ever did 20 years ago. Wow, so it's insane. Crazy. Yeah.
I feel like cynicism travels on the internet faster than it does in real life. And I think as a generation that grew up on social media and grew up on the internet, what I detect from Gen Z is kind of an embedded cynicism about the world and like,
is that right?
Skepticism. And I could see why a book about power appeals to that. It's like, okay, well, this book's going to just cut through the bullshit and actually tell me what's going on. The appeal makes sense.
But I'm not a cynical person. I know people think of the book as cynical, but I don't really think of it as cynical.
Yeah.
Because cynical is basically, leaning into all the bad things in life, et cetera. And it's not very realistic because not all life is bad. There are bad people out there. I just think the book is realistic.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I'm not a cynical person at heart. I'm actually got, unfortunately, more of a romantic, naive streak. And I think it, in some weird way, that comes out in the book. But
yeah, it's interesting. You and I have met in person a few times now. And I imagine the image that people get from reading your books versus
how they see me,
how you actually are in person. Like, do you get people like assuming that you're like trying to pull puppet strings and manipulating them?
Yeah, like if I'm 5 minutes late for a meeting, it's not because of the traffic. It's because I'm playing some kind of weird game on them,
They're like, it's Law 27 or whatever.
Yeah. I know, I've told this story before, but when I met 50 Cent for the first time before we ever thought of writing a book together, he was like, he later told me he was kind of a little bit intimidated by this. He expected an older man, he picked like Henry Kissinger to show up when we first met.
Yeah.
And then he was kind of surprised, maybe even a little bit disappointed that I wasn't like that. Of course, I had the same impression about him. I was expecting someone really kind of mean and intimidating and thuggish, and he was the sweetest, gentlest, nicest person you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, people expect this, that everything I do is a power move, but it's not true.
Yeah. Do you just kind of see that as the cost of the success of the book? Because I get this with my fuck books. Like, people make assumptions about me and then they meet me in person. They're like, oh, you're not like that at all. Like,
you do give a fuck, don't you?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, but
you're outing me, Robert. You're outing me.
Exactly. Sorry. You can start being mean to me now. You better show people. There's a theatrical element to the social world, which I embrace and I think is kind of fun and interesting and is part of the 48 laws of power. So when you enter the world, you're not yourself. I think it's a mistake people make. They have no distance between their inner self and their public self. So they enter the work world and people are different and weird and stuff, and they take it personally. And I try instructing people, it's not personal, it's a game. People are wearing masks. It's like something from the 18th century where people are in costumes and they're in theater and they're performing. People are constantly performing. Well, I'm performing as well. And so if people have this image of me as this dark, sinister figure, sometimes, I don't mind. I might lean into it a little bit. I might give that impression because I kind of enjoy that. I kind of enjoy playing that role sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
But it's not really who I am.
Right. Tell me about, in your book, Mastery, you talk about finding your life task. And from what I know about you and from the bits and pieces I've read about you and talked to you, you seem to know pretty early on that you wanted to be an author. You seem kind of just built to be a writer. Like, what was your process of searching and discovering and finding what you consider your life task?
My story was fairly clear. I mean, like you, it goes up and down. It's never like a straight path.
Of course.
But when I was very young, I loved writing. I believe I wrote something like a novel when I was about 9 years old.
Oh, wow.
And it was about are early humans first entering the scene, walking in the savannas of Africa. I'm 9 years old, and it's told from the point of view of a vulture who's watching them. I'm sure it's terrible.
But for a 9-year-old, that's impressive. That's very
concept,
impressive.
yeah.
I was really obsessed with vultures, and I did little sculptures of vultures.
Yeah.
So you kind of see the dark side already there when I'm 9 years old. But and so I love words, just the sound of words, the sensuality of words, the weirdness of, I never took language at its face value. I thought there's something strange that we speak in words, that we have these symbols that we take for granted, that we talk so smoothly, but they're not. They're weird.
Mm-hmm.
They're these little squiggles that mean something, that have a sound attached to them. As a child, I thought, this is really strange. I was obsessed with words. I played with words. I still do that to this day. I love like palindromes and word games and such. So words obsessed me. And obviously I wanted to be a writer. I thought when I was 18 in my drug days that I would be a wild novelist. That was my real dream. I still am kind of a failed novelist, so to speak. And so I tried, as I've told people before, I tried many different types of writing. I tried journalism. I hated it. I failed at it. It wasn't a good fit. I tried writing novels, bumming around Europe with a backpack. I failed at that. I came back to LA, tried to be a screenwriter. I failed at that. These weren't fits for me because I have a weird mind, and I'm also a control freak, and I didn't have any kind of control in Hollywood. And so, I lucked into the 48 Laws of Power by meeting this man in Italy. We were there to start a new media school for Benetton, some weird project like that. It was kind of a meaningless venture. It really was about being in Italy and having good pasta and espresso and wine. It wasn't about it getting anything done. If you know the Italians, this is the land of Machiavelli. Yeah. And so Joost and I, the man who did that, we kind of bonded over it. One day I'm in Venice, Italy, because it was near Venice, and we were walking. He said, do I have any ideas for a book? And the 48 Laws of Power it was almost like I vomited out of me. Mm-hmm. I kind of improvised. The gist of it, actually, I told him a story, the story that opens the book. I said, this is how I'd illustrate it. He said, that's fantastic. I'll pay you to live while you write the book, because I was very poor. And so I kind of found my way in this kind of circuitous manner to what I was really meant to do. But the lesson, I think, for people, because I get so many emails, people telling me, I don't know what my life's task is. I can't figure out what my purpose is. Can you help me? Can you help me? And there are signs. I believe everybody has signs. And these signs come out. A lot of them are negative signs, which you're not paying attention to. Things that you hate, things that frustrate you. So you're in music. It isn't quite working. You feel a little bit uncomfortable. It's not a fit.
Yeah.
So you make the wise decision that it's not for you to get out. Other people, they maybe feel that frustration, but they don't go there. They go, oh, I've already trained as a musician. I got to stick with it. They go, and then they burn out. They're 30 years old, and it's not working for them. They go, what's my life's purpose? I have no idea. You've got to listen to the signs. Sometimes the signs are physical. They're literally in your body. You literally feel frustrated. You literally feel like you're swimming against the tide. It's not working for you. You get up in the morning, you're not interested in this. So the negative is very important, but also there's the positive. So for me, the negative was I actually hate office politics, which is very ironic for me.
Yeah.
Who wrote that. I can't stand working for other people. And so I have to work for myself. I have to be an entrepreneur. I have to write books. I have to have control. But then there are the positive signs. They're the signs of things that you love, that you're passionate about. They generally show up when you're very 6, 7, 8 years old. And so I tell people you've got to go through that process. You have to reconnect with the child inside of you. Because children are dreamers. Every child thinks, I'm going to be president. I'm going to write a great novel. I'm going to do this, that, or the other. And then those dreams slowly get squeezed out of them.
Right.
But you have to return back to that. You have to have a little bit of that expansive quality, that little bit of imagination, even a little bit of naivete, and go back to who you were and go back to the things that excite you in a way that you can't even explain.
Yeah. The negative feedback thing, one thing I notice in a lot of people, there's this narrative around grit, persistence, hustle culture, right? Like what I notice with a lot of people is when they start running into that resistance and it doesn't feel right, it feels painful, the first thing they tell themselves is like, oh, well, I just need to toughen the fuck up and keep going because this is what, all my heroes did, is they just kept fighting through it. And I think it's so much more nuanced than that, of like understanding when to push through and when to let go.
Well, the subtle art should be actually the title of your next book, because it is subtle. It is nuanced. Life is not so obvious. So sometimes grit and persistence is the right way.
Yeah.
So for me, writing, I failed at all these different aspects. I didn't give up. I didn't say, all right, my parents wanted me to go to law school, wanted me to settle down, wanted me to take these awful television jobs that I had, and I've had the worst television job you can imagine. I won't even say them. They want me to settle down, Yeah. I had to have the persistence to go, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to stick with it. I have faith in myself, even though I got very depressed. But also sometimes persistence can be exactly the wrong thing.
Right.
And the key to everything in life is knowing what you really, truly love, what you were meant to do, why you were born, why you're a different individual. I know it sounds like a cliche, but everybody, your DNA is unique. There's never going to be another Mark Manson. The way your brain is wired, the way your parents raised you, your early experiences, you are unique. And so that is where your power lies. And connecting to that is the source of everything in this world. So if you connect to it, if you know who you are, you know what you love, you know what you were meant to do, and it's not a cliche, it's actually very real, then that persistence will become an actual positive thing in your life, because you'll know, I can't keep kicking against a wall here. It's not what I was meant to do. I got to get out.
Yeah.
So I was 25, 26 years old. I was in New York working in journalism. I had a meeting with an editor after I wrote an article. And I didn't know what the meeting was for. And he was kind of an alcoholic. He was like on his second or third martini at lunch. And he basically said, Robert, you're not a good writer. You're not going to make it in this world. You need to go to business school. You're not disciplined. You're all over the place. You don't understand your audience, right? And so I could have said, fuck you. I could have stayed in journalism. I'd probably be dead by now. I'd probably be an alcoholic because it wasn't right. But I listened to it and I go, there's something true there. It isn't right. It isn't a good fit. I'm hitting against a wall. I got to get out and I got to try something else.
Yeah.
But if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what marked you as a weird person when you were a child, then you're lost in life. Yeah. You have no radar.
One thing that I tell people all the time is I ask them, what's the form of pain that you enjoy that most people can't tolerate, right? Like
and you don't mean like in a kinky way.
No, not in a kinky way. No. Yeah, well, we don't judge here at the Subtle Art Podcast, but
just wanted to clear that up.
Yeah. Keep it a PG-13, Robert.
Sorry.
What is the challenge or struggle that you kind of relish? Like you kind of, like I know for me, and I imagine it's similar for you, like when I'm in the hole with a book, when I'm like just deep in a mess of a draft and I'm like agonizing through it, I'm laying awake at night. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about
right now.
You know what I'm talking about. There's still kind of a sick part of me that likes it.
Yeah.
Like there's something thrilling about it.
Yeah.
And I think most people, they can't stomach it. Whereas like in music school, like I remember the moment I decided to drop out of music school. I remember I was practicing 4 to 6 hours a day.
What did you play?
Guitar. So I was practicing 4 to 6 hours a day on top of all my classes. And I remember I went into one of my private tutors and tried to play a song for him. And he just looked at me and he's like, you know what your problem is? You don't practice enough. And like that was the moment I was like, I'm done. I can't.
And was the practice painful but not in a good way?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. It was drudgery.
Yeah.
And to me, that was a very profound lesson, because I loved performing and I loved getting attention because I could play some song or some solo, but I didn't like practicing. And musicianship is actually practicing.
It's all practicing.
It's the 99% practice, 1% performance, right?
Yeah.
So it was a very painful lesson of like, you think you like this, but you don't actually like it.
Wow, that's very interesting. Yeah. Well, when you love something, when you have that connection like I'm talking about, then the practice, you enjoy it, you enjoy learning.
Yes.
Because you enjoy the process of getting better. And you can feel your brain kind of tingling and things are happening inside. And I tell people, if you have found the right path, if you are like an artist or creative, and you feel frustrated and you feel blocked, that's a good thing, right? That little bit of pain, that little bit of frustration, it's often a signal that you're actually on the verge of turning into the right direction, because it's a signal that things aren't quite working out and you're listening to it. But if you get anxious and you don't listen to the frustration, then you can't be creative. You can't go into it.
Yeah.
But you'll learn at a much higher rate and you'll enjoy, because anything, as I said in Mastery, everything involves a degree of pain, a degree of practice, a degree of drudgery.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's going to come easy in life. So anything skill that you're going to learn is going to involve that. And if you're not connected to it in a deep way like you weren't with music, you're never going to learn fast enough, and you're just going to you're going to burn out too early. So
yeah.
What about, Robert, reconnecting with that life task and going back and finding that? Because I think you talk about a lot of the negative signs.
Yeah.
I think people can get stuck. Everything's just a negative sign. They're like, and they completely forget. Mark, you said that you got disconnected from that at one point, and you kind of by chance stumbled back into it. Robert, it sounds like you kind of always knew you wanted to be a writer of some kind. I think there are a lot of people who they feel like they don't even know what that is to begin with. So can you talk a little bit more about like uncovering that connection to your life task?
Well,
going back, to childhood or whatever.
It is a good question, because a lot of people, they only know the negative.
Right.
They only know. And then you kind of beat up on yourself, and then you start doubting yourself, and you think, well, maybe there's nothing that I'm really good at. Maybe I just need to go make a lot of money, which I'm not against making money. I mean, I'm not telling people to say, oh, I meant to be a poet, which you can't make a living off of. You have to be able to put food on the table if you're supporting a family, et cetera. So being able to make a living is important, right? But you don't have to compromise completely in that. So finding that positive element. Well, the first thing you have to do is it's a process. And people are so impatient. They are so unused to introspecting. And being able to introspect is a very, very powerful tool. And what that means is you have to be able to examine yourself. And in our culture, we're so outer directed. We're so directed towards what other people are doing, toward the social world, that the idea of who am I? What was I like as a child? What do I really love? Is alien to people. Mm-hmm. I can't understand that because I'm a very introspective person. But a lot of people have a hard time with that concept. And I encounter that when I try and counsel them. So I tell people, you have to be patient. It's not going to come in a flash of, wow, I was meant to be a sculptor. Here I go.
Right.
Okay. So you've got to be patient. You got to take a book and you have to make a journal. If that, I think it works for a lot of people. And you have to start going through this process. And I tell people, look for the signs of things that excite you in a way that you can't even really control. Mm. Because we live in a culture that is so damn rational. Everything is an algorithm. Everything is generated by data. But this is a feel. This is not data. This is a feel. This is an intuition. This is something that excites you in an intuitive way. And there's no algorithm in the world that I could invent or any genius could invent to help you find that. It's a feel. It's subtle. It's inside of you. But if you can't go inside of yourself, if you're so not into looking into who you are, all the advice in the world will be useless. And I tell people that I can't help you unless you're willing to go through that process. And some of that examining is tough. Some of it is, I had a rough childhood. Yeah, I had these fantasies, but they weren't necessarily positive. You're going to come upon negative things, you know? And I had a lot of negative things in my childhood too. So you have to be willing to go through that digging. You're like an archaeologist with your own past. You're digging in there, looking for the signs. And they're there. When you were 5 years old, 4 years old, you were naturally excited by certain things. The other thing I tell people is we've got to get away from this idea of intelligence as just being intellectual. There's a book I recommend to a lot of people. I've probably over-recommended it, by Howard Gardner, called The 5 Frames of Intelligence. I'm always misquoting it, but it's something like that. You'll find it. And he's basically a neuroscientist. He's a scientist of some sort. And he said there are 5 forms of intelligence. There's kind of a mathematical intelligence that has to do with patterns, often related to music. There's a social intelligence that has to do with dealing with people. There is kinetic intelligence, which is moving the body, right? Sports or dance or whatever. There's word intelligence. There's that kind. There's another one, I can't remember what it is, imagery or something like that. Every brain has that natural inclination towards one of these intelligences, right? And you have that as well. I compare it to like a grain that's inside of you, and that you have to move with that grain. You have to find it. And it's one of these forms of intelligence. You have it. Yes, you can have 2, but if you have 2 or 3, it starts, I don't know, you're going to get a little bit lost. You're a polymath, and that maybe you're a genius, or maybe you're just confused. But you've got to find that one thing, right? And if it's sports, if it's dance, that's intelligence. Kobe Bryant, my idol, because I love basketball, he's as intelligent as he's a Michelangelo on the basketball court, you know? It's intelligence. Parents like to say, well, no, you've got to go to law school, you've got to be this, you've got to be an academic, and blah, blah, blah. No, it's whatever is that grain of your brain that is natural. You've got to find that. And so don't think in terms of, I want to be this specific job or whatever. Think in terms of what is that natural form that my brain veers towards. And now, if you know that you're somebody who has a mathematical, abstract, mechanical-like brain, all right, let's go into that. Let's go deeper. Now let's find if you're an engineer or if you're a musician or, okay, but you got to go back and you got to dig. I could go on for hours about some of the process that I go through people. That should give you an idea of some of the positive things that you can do.
Yeah, but it is a process. That's what I like about it.
Yeah.
It's not the lightning bolt, like you said. It's not.
No.
And it also never completely ends. It's not like
no, for sure.
You don't just like find the thing and you're like, cool, I'm set. Like there's every 5-10 years, something happens in your life, or you evolve, or you change a little bit, or
definitely
your preferences change. You know, so it's a perpetual thing for sure.
You know, some people they get tired of the thing they've been doing for 10, 15, 20 years, and then they go try something different. And I often counsel, you don't want to go like, you know, you're a writer, and now, oh no, I'm going to be like I don't know, choose something totally irrelevant from that, whatever.
Programmer or something.
Yeah. Okay. That's not, you should go off in a different direction within writing or something. Yeah. Right. And so you get bored, and the boredom either means I've got to change my job, or it means I have to change something within my job. And I prefer the something within my job. So how I personally deal with it is every book that I write is on a completely different subject. I never repeat the same book twice. I'm onto something that is not the book I'm writing now. People are going to be shocked because it's completely different from anything I've ever written. So I don't get bored. I'm constantly challenging myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. We will be right back. All right, we're back. So Robert, we do a segment that Drew and I love called Brilliant or Bullshit, which is we take recent scientific research, surveys, new theories, things that have kind of become popular or become talked about, and we discuss whether we think it's brilliant or whether it's bullshit. So we want to include you on this round. We want to hear your opinion. Okay. We have something selected.
Yes, for this brilliant or bullshit, Robert, we're talking about Peter Pan syndrome. Now, there's a lot of talk about how men are checking out They're not getting jobs, not getting educated, not committing to long-term relationships.
Sitting at home playing video games,
playing
watching
video
porn.
games, vaping, watching porn. Yeah. There's a female version of it too called the Cinderella syndrome, but it's the Peter Pan syndrome is really the in the zeitgeist more and more. And actually, there are some recent studies that are trying to quantify this and label it a I wouldn't say diagnosable syndrome, but they do call it a syndrome, and they suggest therapy for it. What I would like to ask you, first of all, do you think calling it a syndrome is brilliant or bullshit? I think I know what you would think about that. But what do you think the main drivers really are? Is there a problem of prolonged adolescence? What are the drivers of that prolonged adolescence? Should we be therapizing it so much too?
Well, syndrome, that's a bit of bullshit. It's a bit like how people like to talk about things these days, because everybody's an individual. Yeah. Everybody has their own childhood, their own background, their own reasons for wanting to stay in adolescence. And there are plenty of people in my generation, particularly in my generation, who got stuck in adolescence and are still stuck there. So it's not necessarily endemic just to Gen Z. It's a phenomenon that has existed, I'm not saying forever, certainly not. But since the reign of popular culture, probably since the 1950s, the Peter Pan phenomena has become more and more pronounced. And what was the second part of the question?
What do you think is driving it?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as I said, everybody's going to be different. I know that's not a good answer for you, but I think a lot of it's a very strange time to be a male, to be a boy, to be a man. It's a very confusing time. And so I think that's a lot of the source of it. Because when I was growing up, I'm sounding like I'm 100 years old. When I was 30, I hated hearing that stupid ass expression.
Back in my day.
When I walked 12 miles to school in the snow. Anyway, there was this, being a male was obviously positive because it was a very male-oriented culture. But, there was no sense of confusion about it, really, although some people were confused. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, there were icons in sports, in movies, the kind of the rugged masculine hero, but in all aspects of life. I remember as a kid, I'm so old that as a 3-year-old, I can remember John F. Kennedy on the television. That guy, that I was fascinated by him. Mm-hmm. I thought that it was a man who was very commanding. He was the president, but there was also a weird kind of softness to him, like a strange poetic side to it. It drew me in. There were these icons. And so you wanted to grow out of adolescence. You wanted to become a man. You wanted to enter the world and kind of follow in the footsteps of some of these people that you admired. But now it's like being a male, being masculine is almost ugly. It's dirty. It's almost like something you have to wipe off your skin. Ew, toxic masculinity. But, there's something you have to say about testosterone. It can turn ugly, but it drives you. It makes you do things. It's got a positive element. It gives you ambition. It makes you go out and do things. 12,000 years ago, it made you go hunt mastodons and kill them with your other members, right? There should be positive things about being a man. And so then I don't want to stay in adolescence. Don't want to stay in this little cocoon with my mommy and my daddy in my home playing games. I want to go out in the world. I want to conquer. I want to have ambition. I think the root of the problem is that there's no kind of positive masculinity out there. And so it doesn't give people an incentive to get out of that little kind of adolescent cocoon, right?
I agree 100%. It's funny, we were joking around about Dr. K at the beginning of the show.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of the reasons why he's become so popular is there's this whole demographic of young men who are kind of checked out and they're playing video games all day. And he's one of the only popular mental health voices that's speaking directly to them, saying, hey, you're playing too many video games. Let's talk about it. How can we get you back out in the world? I definitely see, a big portion of my audience is younger men. I definitely have noticed this over recent years and I'm becoming a little alarmed by it. I agree that there's a lack of clear role models. There's a lack of there's not a roadmap, right? Like it's not obvious to a 17-year-old male who to be, who they want to grow into, right? And that's difficult and confusing. And then I think the ease of checking out today is so much I mean, I struggle. I mean, I'll download a game on my phone and I'll be lost for 2 hours, right? Like, it's tough, man. It's like, and I've got a fully developed prefrontal cortex. Like, imagine an 18-year-old, like he's fucked. So I really, really sympathize with a lot of the young guys today, and I definitely see it as a problem. It does seem to be a growing problem. The syndrome thing makes me uncomfortable. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on kind of this. There seems to be a little bit of a recent tendency to like medicalize everything.
Yeah.
And especially things that were just kind of not normal behavior, but not necessarily abnormal behavior, say 20 or 30 years ago either.
Like what?
Like a Peter Pan syndrome. Like when I remember when I was in college, me and my friends, we used to go out with this guy who was he was a divorced guy, around 50. A ton of fun. Awesome dude. And we used to go out in the parties and clubs with him. And we used to joke like, oh yeah, it's Peter Pan over there, like, but he was in this phase of his life. He had just gotten out of a marriage and, he was.
Well, you can be a functional Peter Pan.
Totally.
There are a lot of people out there who are, you know. People like Bill Clinton was a functional Peter Pan.
Yeah.
I see them all the time. It's the boomer generation. I'm a little bit younger than that.
Yeah.
It's full of very functional Peter Pans. I'm a functional Peter Pan.
Very true. It's very true.
I've been accused of the same as well, yeah.
So, I mean, well, this is exactly my point, right? Is that until, I guess, a few years ago, this was just kind of like something that you would casually talk about in conversation, or like, oh yeah, he's a bit of a Peter Pan, he still goes out to clubs and
now
he's 50.
There's researchers
but
now.
Now there's a syndrome, and it's a social problem.
They're making recommendations to therapists.
Are they actually like medicating people for this?
No, not that I know of yet. The paper that kind of operationalized this as an actual psychological phenomenon, is in 2021. And they don't give any recommendations for like medications or anything like that, but they do say therapists who are seeing this all around the world should be aware of it. And to me, that just, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. I mean, we can't send all of our kids to therapists, and also, it's like there's too much talking going on in this culture and not enough acting.
I fucking love that. I just want to like take that clip. That's the episode. There's too much talking. I know where you're going with it. It's so true. Sorry, continue.
No. But sometimes you just got to get off your ass and you got to act. You got to do things in this world. And that's the best therapy in the world.
Yeah.
So I make the analogy in my book and in some of my talks that I see the power and the life out there in our work world as a game. Mm-hmm. It is a power game, and I frame it that way. And you're maneuvering. You're constantly maneuvering. It's this fluid game that you're playing where the parameters nobody really sets. The rules aren't very clear cut, but there are certain laws of power that you can operate to get ahead. It's the most amazing game you could ever play, and you should enjoy it and you should have fun. Well, let's start talking about things like that like life is a game. Get out there and be active. When it comes to dating, stop all this bullshit with your phone. Yes. Go out to bars, go to supermarkets, learn how to pick up on women, learn how to get over your fears and actually interact with them. So start acting and stop talking and stop overanalyzing things, but actually act in the world. That's, to me, the greatest therapy in the world.
I as someone who, for better or worse, kind of operates within the self-help industry, this is my personal pet peeve. It's the thing that drives me insane is there's so much emphasis put on awareness. Like, let's be aware of our problems. Let's be aware of our emotional issues. Let's be aware of our mental health problem. And it's people treat that as an end of it in itself. Like, well, the fact that we're sitting around talking about our trauma and our baggage, we're doing the work. They even call it that. doing the work. And I'm with you. I'm like, okay, that's great. We can talk until we're blue in the face, but until you actually go and behave differently, until your behavior has shifted in some tangible way, what is it? What does it matter? What are we doing?
Well, I don't know if I can remember it exactly right, because it's about a chapter I was writing just a few months ago, and I've already forgotten it. But there was a psychologist professor at UCLA named Schwartz. I forget his first name. His study was OCD, right? And this is back in the 80s when people were first calling it a syndrome. And so much of the therapy was a talking therapy, right? And giving them these certain ideas about it. Let's talk about it, let's figure it out. He came up with these action strategies. He literally had you go out and do things that were your biggest fear.
Yeah.
Because OCD is all about fear, right? So if you're afraid of germs, go out and rub your hand in some dirt or whatever. He had them do this over time. He took brain scans, and their brains were literally changing. The brain was rewiring itself through these action strategies.
Yeah.
So when you take action, your brain changes, it adapts. That's how the human brain is. But if you're always internal, if you're just talking about things, none of that stuff is going on, because it's not how our brains are wired.
Yeah. And I feel like the danger in it is that it can, like, let's say you and I have a very profound conversation. It gives you the illusion that something has changed.
Yeah.
Even though we're still sitting in the same damn couch.
Yeah.
Doing the exact same thing we were doing 30 minutes ago, right? And so I see that all the time, that so much of this industry is just built around giving people the sensation of having a change happen without any necessary behavior shifting.
I'm going through something similar to you, like questioning and wondering about the self-help thing, and whether I'm just part of that problem as well, whether I'm just a bunch of words. But I think that at least I know that my approach is to give people maps on how to act.
Yeah.
And I'm very much against overanalyzing and talking things to death.
Yeah. And it's talking is necessary, but not sufficient.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, for sure. Great. All right. We solved Peter Pan syndrome. We'll be right back. And we're back. All right. We've got questions for Robert.
We do, but we have some listener questions. This one actually came in from Spotify, and Mark and I recently did an episode on behavioral change, and there was this big study where some psychologists came up with all these interventions to get people to go to the gym more, and it turns out they were terrible at it. It came up with
Who was terrible at it?
The psychologists were terrible at coming up with these interventions that would work. And we got a question in response to this that I think was a really good one for you, Robert. It comes from Ian, who says, as bad as modern psychology is at helping people, is our current best bet given that it's at least based on science, or is this the wrong approach given that science doesn't tell us what's right and wrong, and we should instead turn to things like timeless philosophy? Basically, the question is like, what's the value of science and behavioral intervention specifically in our lives? You mentioned a little bit already that you were skeptical of, we don't need all this data to make a decision, or we need some sort of guidance from above to help us make these decisions. What's your take on this?
Well, I mean, is it related to like something like going to the gym or exercising, or what is it in relation to?
That was what the question was, but I think the larger question is, how much should we lean on science or the behavioral science, academia in general, I think, for improving our lives?
Well, I'm old school. I'm an old guy. Let's not, call spade a spade here. And I think it's bullshit. I mean, look, what happens with big data and with algorithms, and we've seen it with Facebook early on, is you think that you're accumulating big data about how people actually are, but what you're actually doing is you're changing who people are. You're changing their behavior, because now you're feeding them the very algorithms that you think that they are, that involve their behavior. And then you're turning them into lemmings, a herd. Everyone's now going to be responding the same way. But you're an individual. It all starts with who you are as a human being, as an individual, born into your body, with your parents, with your background, with your genetics. okay? Big data doesn't have anything to do with it, doesn't know what that is. AI can't possibly see into that. So I'm more of the timeless wisdom type person. But I really think you have to know who you are in a gut way. And, we're talking about awareness and talking has its value, as we were saying, as we were talking. But there's also this very important gut element of knowing what makes you different, what motivates you, what you were meant to accomplish, what you hate, what you love. And if you're constantly looking for science and big data and algorithms to solve all your problems, well, you're not, because you're running away from the only source of your salvation, which is you as an individual. I'm going to sound like a nutty preacher. We do not have enough individuals in this world. We do not have enough weirdos. We do not have enough people who are happy to be unique and different. And no amount of AI, in fact, all of that stuff is turning you into just a glob, a big social glob on social media where everybody is the same. Everybody is told to respond like little mice to this algorithm, and that we're turning into something that's not human.
Yeah.
So I'll shut up, but that's sort of my answer.
We'll take your soapbox away now. No, I sympathize with this a lot. It's interesting. Early in my career kind of began around the confluence of positive psychology. There was this whole movement in the 2000s of positive psychology where a lot of psychologists felt like they were able to quantify happiness and deduce exactly which practices led you to be happier and feel more fulfilled in your life. And, I was young, I was naive, I bought fully into it, hook, line, and sinker. I wrote tons of articles around positive psychology research and everything. And it's been interesting because over the past 10 years or so, something like 80% of those studies don't replicate. Like they don't, like they're insufficient sample sizes. They can't be reproduced in other studies. And so we're kind of back to square one of like, oh, actually we don't know what makes us happy. And we don't know how much willpower we have. And we don't know how much motivation is external versus internal. And like it's given me a much deeper and more profound appreciation for the timeless things.
Yeah.
The simple principles, whether it's the Stoics or the Buddhists or the Christians, like if it's been around for 2,000 years, there's probably something to it. And so we should maybe put a little bit more weight in it.
I mean, if you think about, I tell people this all the time, if you think about 2,000, if you only go back 200 years ago, I like to go back to the world of the writer Jane Austen in like the 1810s. Mm-hmm. You have no internet, you have no television, you have no radio, your only form of entertainment is people. So you're constantly interacting with people day in and day out. That's your only salvation. It's the only thing you have to distract you from the misery of your life, right? So people become these incredible observers, right? And then they write about it. I'm not saying everybody, but the great philosophers, the thinkers, the writers, the novelists, they're so keyed into people and who they are that they see things that we're no longer capable of seeing because we're so this-oriented, right?
Yeah.
We're not human. As I said, we're not so human anymore. So that's why someone like Plato or Socrates could have this timeless wisdom, because they're wandering around in their sandals and togas, just constantly interacting with other people, thinking about issues that we don't think about anymore because we take everything for granted. We've lost our sense of wonder. So yeah, look, I studied classics, ancient Greek and Latin. That's my world. I find when I read something from that time, I feel like I'm traveling to another planet. I'm so amazed, I'm so astounded by what their insights, what they're saying, what they're talking about humans, about our senses, about what it just means to be alive. So, God, I'm losing track of what our question is. But
I love it.
Science versus philosophy, science versus wisdom, data versus wisdom. It sounds like we're all team wisdom.
Yeah, but going back to what you said about we need more individuals, I think I found this in myself when I studied psychology. I was in academia for a little while too. And so I was like, yes, everything should be data driven. And for the longest time, for instance, Mark mentioned willpower. How much willpower do we have? Well, we thought this was this little finite resource that we had to like parcel out and distribute throughout our lives in strategic ways. Well, it turns out if you believe that you don't have a lot of willpower, you probably don't. And I see this over and over and over again. I'm going down the laundry list of things that I've believed for so long. And extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, that could be complete bullshit too. I'm externally motivated by a lot of things. Is that such a bad thing? Yeah. No, it's not.
It reminds me, there's so much like recursive stuff in psychology. It reminds me of there's a great one-liner from the comedian Emo Phillips where he said, I used to think the brain was the most amazing thing in the universe. Then I remembered who was telling me that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but I mean, 100 years ago, there was this, or more than 100 years, this man named William James, a psychologist.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Big fans.
He wrote things about willpower that blow all of this bullshit in our culture now out of the water. He nailed it perfectly. If you want to understand will and the power that you have through your willpower, go read William James and throw all those studies out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Here. What else do we got?
Yes, we do have some more questions. So these came in. We asked people to ask you questions.
Yeah.
One of them will kind of get back to the true self one. What is your recommended process to get back to one's true self after getting lost, exhausted, and cynical in midlife? 40 Laws came out when you were like 38 or 9, right? You were
39.
Yeah, so you were older. We have a lot of people like, I'm 35, my life is over. What do I do?
I felt that way pretty much too when I was 35.
Sure.
Well, as I said, everyone's different, and I don't know where this person comes from, but hopefully in that period up until your age of 35, you have done something with your life. You have learned some skills. You have followed some kind of career path. It just wasn't the right one, okay? But you can't just junk all of that and suddenly start over. You have to build from what you already have, right? It's kind of an organic process. You can't just suddenly start from a blank slate and say, I'm going to go completely redraw the course of my life. You're setting yourself up for misery because that's not how the world works. You have a brain. It has developed certain things. It has functioned in a certain way, and it has accumulated some level of skill. So where can we apply that skill that fits you better? So when you're 22, 23, that process that we went through earlier on, it fits more. But now you're 35, you're 36, it's a different process. And if you're 50, it's even more different process. If you're 70, I don't think there is any process anymore. I think it's over. But I'm trying to see in the seeds of who you are, the 35-year-old, where it went wrong. And so I like to go back to people and sort of go back where they felt like they made a wrong turn. And often where they made a wrong turn was they decided on a career either because it was money and they needed the money, or because people told them that this is what they should go into, right? Like your parents.
Yeah.
A lot of people who end up becoming lawyers, I don't mean to pick on lawyers because we need lawyers, obviously, but they go into law school for that purpose, to make money. And then they kind of burn out because certain kinds of law just are so repetitive. And there's and after you turn 35, like, shit, I'm just trapped in this thing. I'm so bored. I'm so turned out. So we got to go back and figure out where you made your wrong turn. And often it's because you listen to someone else or you grab for money. All right. So you grab for money because you're anxious. You feel like you don't know if you're going to make it in this world. You need to eat, and you're worried about your future and your career. Okay. So if you're 35 and you made a wrong turn and you still have that anxiety about making money, we have to prescribe something that fits you. I don't like telling people to do things that are going to ruin them, going to make them miserable, or that can potentially really screw up their future. I'm very sensitive to that. So if money is very important to you, we have to take that path that you're on, and we have to deviate it a little bit in a slightly different direction. And I talk to people about that, and we go back into their childhood. We go back into things that indicate more of where they would like to be. And even if you're like flipping burgers at In-N-Out, there's going to be some other path slightly different from that will still be better than where you are right now. Okay? So if the money thing isn't so important, if you're not so anxious, then we have a little bit more latitude to explore and go into something. That deviation doesn't have to be like this. It can be maybe more like that, but it can't be like this.
Yeah.
Okay? So everything depends on who you are, your psychology, and your level of anxiety plays a very important role in this, because making these changes can be very frightening. I once had some guy who was in his mid-20s who was basically trapped at a terrible job, kind of like a fast food type job. And I was very sensitive. He had a wife and some kids. And I said, all right, we figured out what he really wanted, what he was really excited about, which was great, because sometimes you never do figure that out. And I said, don't quit your job, but I want you to start studying this new field on the internet, absorbing it at night in the 1 or 2 hours that you have free. And then I want you to go to night school and maybe work 4 days a week and spend some time there. You still can pay your bills and go to night school. He said just the thought of doing that made him feel 1,000 times better, that there was some kind of hope, that there was a path.
Yeah.
Right? So I've got to work with the individual and where they are, and deal with the anxiety about making a living.
Yeah, totally. I one thing for sure is I think people definitely underestimate how much a small shift. I think it's when they feel emotionally overwhelmed, because the emotion is so all-encompassing, they assume that they just have to throw everything out and start over from scratch. Whereas it's like, if you just shift a couple things in the right direction, it's like dominoes. It has like a reverberating effect across your life. It was really interesting though. We ran a survey maybe 3 or 4 months ago on our audience. And one of the questions we asked, purely out of curiosity, was just, what are you struggling with right now? Like, what is the biggest struggle in your life? And it was very interesting among the middle-aged cohort, say people in their 40s and 50s. One of the most common responses was people saying, I have a great career. I've got a great family, great spouse. Is this it? I kind of want to just disappear and go to Tahiti and start over. Like they kind of had a little bit of this midlife, this can't be it, right? Like there has to be more. And almost like a little bit of a panic that went on. And I'm curious what your thoughts with somebody like that would be.
Well, my thought is, for those of you out there who are in your 20s, do not get to that point, damn it. Don't ever let that happen to you, because it will happen to you and it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's tragic.
Yeah.
Right? So don't let that happen.
Yeah.
Figure it out before then. But some of it is like unrealistic.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in your mid-40s and you've got all these things that you said, maybe you have to kind of accept it and find some beauty in it. Now, this will sound completely irrelevant and off track here, but 6 years ago, I suffered a stroke, right? And prior to that stroke, I was somebody that swam every third day, rode a mountain bike up into the hills and hiked and other things. I was just very active because it was my main way of de-stressing. Overnight, all of that is taken away from me, right? I can't walk, I can't hike, I can't swim. I can't take even a simple walk. I'm not trying to get pity, but I'm saying, I had to adapt.
Yeah.
And what I had to do is I meditate every day, and I had to go through this process, and I'm writing a book right now, and I had to find what is beautiful, without being cliched or Pollyannish about it, what is beautiful about my life as it is. These are my circumstances. This is, what if I was punished or whatever happened, it happened. It's just who I am now. I am this person who can't walk. That's who I am. But I'm still able to think. I'm still able to write books. I'm still able to find beauty in my limited world. Yes, I wish I was an athlete. Yes, I wish I could do the things I did before. But that doesn't help me at all.
Yeah.
So my advice to someone maybe in that area is become a little more zen and find a little bit more of the beauty in your life as it is. And don't be thinking that there's some golden ring out there that at 45, 48, some hot model that you can run off to Tahiti and start over and, have new, all those other things.
Peter Pan syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's definitely there's a connection there for sure. You could almost say to a certain degree, maturity is the acceptance of your own limitedness, I think.
Yeah.
I
mean, you can get too accepting.
Yeah, that's true. You can get complacent, which is different. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we've talked a lot about that, though. I think there's a gratitude piece in that where acknowledging just your existence is a miracle, first of all.
Yeah.
And I've leaned, the older I get, the more the simple things around me are very much like, this is amazing. There's literally, now it's going to sound like I'm gloating, but there are literally days where I'm like, I'm one of the luckiest people on the planet, if not the luckiest person on the planet. Sometimes. You are. Yeah. So
that's the subject of my new book, by the way.
Oh, so, it is? Okay. Yeah. Oh, we outed you. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Luck or gratitude?
No, neither. It's about
Drew Burney.
Yes, exactly.
That would be shocking.
The biography, the unauthorized biography of Drew Burney.
Everybody would be shocked by that.
No, it's a book about the sublime.
That's it. That's the word I wanted.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to say, I have a chapter called Awaken to the Strangeness of Being Alive. And so, being alive is a very strange thing.
It's so weird.
It's
so weird.
To think that in this vast universe, there's life here on this one tiny little thing in this vast ocean of darkness, and we're here. And do you know the chances of your parents ever coming together and reproducing Drew? You can never calculate it. It's impossible because, your parents met on some quirk of fate, right? And they may have never met. Multiply that by 70, 80,000, all the generations that went prior to them meeting. Yes, maybe a tiny little part of you might have been born if that had gone off 70,000 years ago differently, but it wouldn't be you at all. Who you are is the strangest thing you could possibly think of. So it's a book about triggering those kinds of thoughts in people about everything around them. Because for me, writing that book is like live or die. If I don't start thinking like that, I'm just going to get so goddamn depressed, I'll kill myself. I have to think about these things,
Well, there were several questions, people asking, when is the next book coming out? So when is that book coming out?
Every author's favorite question.
Yeah, I know, it's the worst question ever.
You know. Yeah.
The people want to know, though. Sounds like you're in the midst of the throes of writing it. So,
there are 12 chapters. I'm on chapter 10.
Okay.
And I was hoping it would be out next year, but I won't. I'm not getting my act together.
No promises, yeah.
So 2026.
Okay.
It'll be out in 2 years.
Okay.
If I don't die before then. But if I die, they'll still be able to get the book out because I have enough of it out, finished. Okay. So,
we'll look forward to it. We'll have to have you back. We'll sit and bask in the miracle of life together when you're here.
I'm really looking forward to that one. Yeah.
It's a weird book. It's like my wife says it's kind of like taking drugs without drugs.
Yes.
It's funny because when we were sitting here talking about how weird life was, I was like, man, we sound like a bunch of stone kids in a college dorm. Isn't it so weird we're alive?
It's the kind of thing that I know. I remember seeing that thing like that.
Totally.
Smoking some pot.
We did not drop any acid for this episode.
Yeah, this was a sober episode. Yeah, maybe we should. Maybe next time.
That's the next one.
Next time. All right. Thank you so much, Robert, for coming.
Thank you, Mark. I really enjoyed it.
It was a ton of fun. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck podcast is produced by Drew Burney. It's edited by Andrew Nishimura. Jessica Choi is our videographer and sound engineer. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.